Good morning on this Friday, January 22nd. Let it be known, more than 3,000 Americans every day are dying of COVID-19. The president does have a plan. The former president did not have a plan. We're going to talk about that and also the challenges of distant learning, especially in the African American community, and what Black children and Latino children and other communities of color face in trying to get an education during the pandemic. Good morning to Dr. Ben Chavis, our president. As always, it's a pleasure to have you join us in the morning.
Good morning, Stacy, and to the whole NNPA team. Good morning, Enchanter. Thank you for being our producer. And Stacy, this is another day that the Lord has made. Let's get right to the headlines.
Well, first, before we get to COVID, we must bring you some breaking news that happened last night. Representative Andy Harris of Maryland set off the metal detectors outside the House floor, and an officer discovered that he was carrying a concealed and loaded weapon, trying to carry it onto the House floor. It's unbelievable. Representative
This is
Alexandria,
this is Republican.
Republican, yes, Republican legislator, Republican congressman, and it's unbelievable in the wake of what happened on January the 6th. And Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that, and I quote her, I think a very considerable amount, a lot of members of the House still don't feel safe around other members of Congress. The moment you bring a gun onto the House floor in violation of rules, you put everyone around you in danger. It is irresponsible. It is reckless. But beyond that, it is a violation of the rules. And making it worse, Dr. Chavis, Congressman Harris tried to pass the weapon off to another member who was not licensed to carry a weapon. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has launched an investigation into those in Congress who acted in concert, who she believes acted in concert with the insurrectionists.
Yes. Well, I think that it not only has to be fully investigated, but there has to be consequences. When you break the rules of the House of Representatives, there should be consequences. This was intentional. It was not an accident. But the good thing that the Capitol Police discovered it and reported it. I think that what happened on January the 6th is the result of arrogance. One of the aspects, one of the tenets of white supremacy is the level of arrogance matched with ignorance and matched with a no care attitude for the health and welfare of others, particularly those who are people of color across America. And unfortunately, you have members of the Congress of the United States still practicing white supremacy, even in the wake of the January 6th violent, deadly insurrection that was encouraged by former President Trump. So I think Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus and all the members of the Progressive Caucus, the Latino Caucus, most of the members of Congress, both on the House and Senate side, are going to have to make an example of somebody. Some of these members of Congress need to be expelled.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, you think about it, even before the insurrection and the new rules and putting in the metal detectors, even before that, a member was never allowed to bring a weapon onto the House floor, and yet Representative Harris attempted to do so just yesterday, just last night.
Well, he was trying to prove a point. He was trying to prove a point. You have to understand, we're all striving, as President Biden said, as President Obama once said, as President Abraham Lincoln once said, we're striving to a more perfect union. But there's an element in our society, in our democracy, that does not want a more perfect union. These people want to succeed from a union. These people want to practice the Confederacy again. And the fact that the Confederate flag was waved around inside the United States Capitol on January the 6th. For some people, that didn't that wasn't an uncomfortable sight. That was a reaffirmation of their white supremacy. There's a reaffirmation of their tendency toward the Confederacy, and there's a reaffirmation that they don't want a perfect union. They want an imperfect union. They want a discriminatory union. They want a voter suppression union. They want a police brutality union. And for African Americans, for others in our society who have worked hard, who've struggled, who've given up their lives even for the right to vote, for the right to have adequate representation, we're not going to let nobody, whether you're in the Congress or you're on the streets or wherever you're in the police department or law enforcement or even in the military, we aren't going to let any of you turn us around.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, and a final note on that, you think about this, had if any of the members of employees of NNPA brought a weapon into the office, our executive administrator, Claudette Perry, or yourself would immediately terminate them. Shouldn't there be, these Congress people work for us, they work for the people.
Yeah, there are rules. There are rules for expulsion, and I'm sure that Speaker of the House is going to deal with it. One of the things I want to make sure, ask our producer and China to put his picture up again. I think people need to see this guy again. You know, we need to not allow these people to get away with anonymity. There he is,
Yep, Representative
Congressman
Andy Harris of
Harris,
Maryland.
Congressman Harris from Maryland. Man, that's right next door to Washington, D.C. Man, we'll have to look out for this guy. This guy is armed and dangerous. Armed and dangerous. A member of Congress, Congressman
Yeah,
Harris.
yeah. And moving on, and we'll stay on top of that story throughout. Let it be known next week as well to see where it goes. But COVID-19 is claiming more than 3,000 lives a day now. Dr. Chavis, COVID-19 though, and it has really harmed the Black community more than any others. One estimate puts the death toll in the Black community, the low estimate of 50,000 of the 400,000 deaths. However, there are others who believe it's much more. And so President Biden is rolling out his response. But the question still remains, will Black America take the vaccine? We see here the Reverend Jesse Jackson has taken the vaccine. There's been an effort to show African American leaders taking this vaccine, Dr. Chavis. How important is that?
It's very, very important. And um, uh, President Vice President Kamala Harris showed great leadership when she publicly took the vaccination. And so did President Biden exhibited leadership when he took the coronavirus, vaccination, the vaccine. I think the vaccinations are key to the health, the recovery of the Black community from this virus. And I think the statistics are yes, some states were not even reporting the racial statistics in regard to the death rate. Most authorities say that Black people are dying 3 to 4 times the number of whites that are dying from the coronavirus. So that of the over 400,000 have died, yes, there are tens and tens of thousands of African Americans who have already passed away, and they should not have passed away. They should not have been killed by this virus. But for 4 years, and particularly last year, the health of our community has been deeply, deeply impaired. And certainly since the coronavirus, it's been a disaster. And that's why we are extending our state of emergency for Black America. You recall almost a year ago, we issued a state of emergency. We established the NNPA Coronavirus Task Force, and we thank Dr. Hilton and we thank Dr. Benjamin, Dr. Benjamin, and many others for their vigilance and for their leadership. And so, yes, very public African Americans have taken the vaccine. I plan to be vaccinated next week. I'm scheduled to be, and I will let you know when that happens, Stacy. So, yes, it's very important for African Americans to be on guard, to get the truth, And we in the Black press is our job to help get the word out. And that's the sister, the nurse in New York, who was the first American to take the vaccine, was an African American woman, courageous nurse in the state of New York.
Yeah, she was at my old hospital where my primary care physician worked, Long Island Jewish Medical Center on Long Island in New York some years ago. Dr. Fauci said, Dr. Chavis, he said the lack of candor and facts cost so many lives last year. He says there's no secret. We had a lot of divisiveness. We've had facts that were very, very clear that were questioned. People were not trusting what health officials were saying. And Dr. Fauci made it a point to say that the leadership, the administration was responsible.
Oh, absolutely. The former Trump administration is directly responsible. And I still think they should be held accountable, even though they're out of office. For example, you recall for months they said, oh, don't worry, get your vaccination. We have a stockpile. We have enough for all Americans. Come to find out, there is no stockpile. There's no national plan. And you saw just within the last 24 hours, at the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration, there's now a plan that's being put in place, a federal plan that all states will have to abide by. It's amazing that all these months and all this devastation of the coronavirus, Stacey, there was no federal national plan in place. Each state was left to devise its own distribution plan, its own testing plan. And as you know, there's still groups of people out there who are anti-maskers, who are anti-social distancers. And all these contribute to the 3,000 to 4,000 people that are dying each day unnecessarily in the wealthiest country in the world. It's interesting. We have more technology, we have more medical care, we have more wealth than any nation in the world, but yet we're leading the deaths of all the nations in the world. The United States of America is at the top of the list of having inadequate health care, but it's also inadequate leadership. And so President Biden and Vice President Harris, they have a big challenge, but I think they're going to be up to the task.
Yeah, they certainly appear to be. We want to say good morning to Lynn Spivey, and we want to say good morning to our national chair, Karen Carter Richards, of course. David Youngblood, it's always good to see David Youngblood. And Dr. Chavis, one of the great news minds I've ever known, Gail Williams, is watching this morning. Gail is a long, long time friend and
Great.
fantastic person and teacher of news and everything else. She's an example of all of African American women who are in the news and African American men like myself who she mentored. So good morning, Gail. Dr.
Yes,
Chavis.
good morning. And I want to give a shout out to our chairman of our board, NMPA chair, the distinguished publisher of the Houston Forward Times, and we really appreciate the work of the Black press in all of our states. And we've been led so righteously by Karen Carter Richards. We're looking forward to being with her virtually next week at the NMPA Midwinter Conference. That's our board meeting is next Wednesday, January 27th. And then on the 28th and the 29th, we've got some amazing workshops lined up, Stacey, to talk about meeting the challenges, the opportunities, and responsibilities of the Black press, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. So, Madam Chair, shout out to you and to our whole executive committee and to all the members of our board of directors. And I know Bobby Henry is out there also listening in from the West Side Gazette down in South Florida. But go ahead and make your point, Stacey.
Well, I think you made the point. But, our chair, speaking of our chair, Karen Carter Richards, we really appreciate the fact that she sat in on our election coverage, participated in our election, not election, I keep saying election. She did that too, but the inauguration the other day, which we had wall-to-wall coverage, Diane Hocker from the Afro newspaper is also joining us this morning. And speaking of the virtual conference next week, Dr. Chavis, the challenges of virtue in distant learning during COVID-19 for African Americans is profound. Educators say that among the biggest challenge with many of the students of color they serve is engagement. Students are they're faced with inefficient resources, little excitement to learn, and they are born without being surrounded by role models and motivations which lead a child to dream, work hard, and be successful. Some have noted that the lack of computers, the lack of access to the internet has prohibited students of color from reaching their potential. Dr. Chavis, I know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is doing a lot with the National Newspaper Publishers Association to tackle this issue.
Absolutely. I'm so proud. Dr. Elizabeth Primus, Ron Burke, Claudette Perry, Norman Rich, you Stacy, Okina Jenkins, Julie Party, and many, many others at the NNPA have been engaged all year with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have a national education public awareness program, and our focus is how to close the education gap. There was a gap before the pandemic. Now the pandemic has hit America, in particular Black America. The education gap has widened. The challenge of distance learning, the challenge of virtual learning. And one of the things that we're pleased is that we're getting that word out. And so one of the workshops or one of the presentations at our Midwinter Conference next week is going to be on the issue of distance learning, the challenges, but also how to overcome. We've got some distinguished educators, and I think that now we have a new administration in Washington. The United States Department of Education is going to tackle this issue. You notice that President Biden issued an executive order on the first day on equity. And that means that every federal government is going to, agency is going to have to report, including the Department of Education, how we're providing more equity of resources distribution, equity of results, and certainly this issue of getting our young people with the highest quality education, because education is the key to liberation, Stacey, and certainly across the country and all of our regions. I'm so proud that our Black publishers, members of the NNP, are tackling this issue, addressing the issue of equal education for all children, but particularly for African American and Latino children, where these education gaps now are widening, and not only in the context of the coronavirus, but as you know, systemic racism. And that's another, you've heard the President of the United States and the Vice President for the first time in 4 years talk about systemic racism, talk about the history of racism. And on other news channels, and I'll say it on our channel, particularly on Fox News channel, they're taking exception that white supremacy has been called out. They're taking exception that the sheets have been pulled off some of these people who are wearing invisible Klan robes.
Yeah, and for those who may not know, the NNPA represents the 230 African American owned newspapers and media companies around the country, the Black Press of America, if you will. And the Black Press was founded 194 years ago in New York, Freedom's Journal, where our founders said, "We wish to plead our own cause. For too long, others have spoken for us." And so here we are in 2021, 194 years later, Dr. Chavis, and we are still tackling the issues that are important to Black America. I was speaking to Richard Kaplan yesterday. He's the executive director of IvyTutorsNetwork.com, which is a vendor that teaches students in multiple underserved public and charter schools in the Bronx, Harlem, and Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York. And he said that the digital divide doubly impacts students of color. It completely stops our tutoring with almost all of our school partners. And so we are seeing the disadvantage, and it's been historically, as we know, a disadvantage. And again, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is partnering and has partnered with the NNPA as we try to do our part to close that divide, Dr. Chavis.
Absolutely. And during the Midwinter Conference next week for the NNPA, and it'll be open to the public, but you have to go to the website and register at the NNPA.org. And also, you'll find information about the upcoming NNPA virtual Midwinter Conference at blackpressusa.com. The thing is, yes, we are going to, but that's our challenge. That's one of our challenges, how to close this educational gap, how to deal with the digital divide in our community, the absence of broadband in a lot of our communities. So, well, listen, but I want everybody to not only know what the challenges are, but to rededicate ourselves that every time we face these disparities, face these discriminations, face these inequities, we come with a sense of determination, a sense of resilience, a sense of response. It's call and response. We know what the issues are. Now it's our time to work together to improve the quality of life of our community. And I think this whole issue of education, equity, education, equality, Stacy, is something that the NNPA is going to continue to champion. And we are thankful that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is helping us to make this a priority for 2021.
Yeah, and so again, the conference, the Midwinter Conference, is from next Wednesday to Friday. NNPA.org for more information. It is open to the public, as Dr. Chavis said. You have to register ahead of time. It's free. We had a fantastic summer conference in which I forget the numbers, but I know a lot of people registered.
Over 100,000, over
Over
100,000 people
100,000.
participated. Yes.
Yeah, and we got a lot of comments from around the globe, really, on that conference. It was our first digital conference. Of course, it was forced upon us by the pandemic, but nonetheless, the Black press rose to the challenge, Dr. Chavis.
Absolutely. The Black press is resilient because DNA is in the part of our DNA of Black America is the question and the hope and the promise of resilience. Sometimes we get knocked down, but we get right back up stronger.
Yeah, and we talking about education as well in the pandemic, but education in general, Dr. Chavis, one of the things to look forward to, many people were looking forward to in the change of administration, is a new education secretary. How important is that?
It's very, very important because the former education secretary, DeVos, was not concerned about racial inequity. If anything, they tried to pretend like racial inequity does not exist. And of course, even in the last days of the Trump administration, they put forth these policies to try to keep schools from teaching our young people the truth. And so I think that the curriculum, as well as the distribution of resources, we have to bridge the digital divide that you've highlighted this morning, Stacy. But we also need to look at the curriculum. What is being taught? I think our nation has this racial problem, deep-seated racial problem, because we have failed all of the young people, all of the students, from pre-K through high school, through graduate, and even in graduate school, undergraduate to graduate school. We don't have the adequate curriculum that deals with racism, that deals with systemic prejudice. And that's why you have all this resurgence of hate groups, because it's fueled because out of ignorance. It's fueled when you take away the truth, when you take away facts, then you let people be vulnerable to all kind of myths and stereotypes. And so for 194 years, the Black press, 194 years, the Black press has been on the front line of reporting the news, but also being an advocate for freedom, justice, and equality.
Yeah, and think about that too. You talk about boldness and courageousness. The Black press was founded before the end of slavery, Dr. Chavis. So it tells you just how courageous and bold those gentlemen were who founded the Black press. And education, we talked about the education secretary. Well, one of the things that President Biden has done, he did on the first day, was sign an executive order to eliminate this 1776 commission in which the former president wanted to, as he put it, instill patriotism in school, teach patriotism. Another, what many say is a racist policy that President Biden got rid of with the stroke of a pen, Dr. Chavis.
Absolutely. The stroke of the pen goes both ways. President Trump used the stroke of the pen to demean people, to deny people equal rights. And now President Biden is using the stroke of the pen to afford equal rights, to correct some of the injustices of the immediate past. And the question now is, as I said yesterday, Stacey, after all these executive orders get signed, now the test is how they will be implemented. How will people follow the law? How will people abide by it? And I think that we just had an example yesterday, last night, from Congressman Harris, a white Republican congressman from Maryland, breaking the law, breaking the rules as a member of Congress, trying to bring a weapon onto the floor of the United States Congress. I think it's a sad commentary, but it's a truthful commentary. And I think we have to hold a lot of people accountable, Stacey, from the halls of Congress to city councils, to county commissioners, to mayors, to state legislators, to every place where there's an elected office. 2021 has to be the year of accountability. And I can assure you that the black press, we're going to be on it. We're going to be publishing the truth, speaking truth to power, publishing truth to power, distributing truth to power, and keeping our people woke.
Yeah, and for those who may not know, the rules for Congress is slightly different. They can carry weapons. They just can't carry a loaded weapon onto the House floor. They can't carry a weapon at all. And in this case, from what we understand, Congressman Harris's weapon was actually loaded. So
Yes.
that made it even worse there. Another note, today the U.S. Senate is on track to confirm retired General Lloyd Austin as America's first African-American Department of Defense secretary. So Secretary of Defense, I should say. He was given the waiver by the House. They voted to approve the waiver, which was needed because of his position. But the first African-American defense secretary should be approved or confirmed today by the Senate. So, Dr. Chavis, last words today?
Yeah, well, we salute General Austin and to be the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America. We have a lot of brothers and sisters who are in the military, all branches of the military. And again, African Americans have faithfully and valiantly served and bravely and courageously served in the United States military from the beginning of this country. There's never been a war that we have not fought in. My father was a World War I veteran. Even when the army was segregated, black people fought for this country. The Tuskegee Airmen flew planes for this country while segregation to defend this democracy. And so it's very fitting that in 2021, the Biden-Harris administration has a brother, a strong, tall, courageous, giant man in his military success and his courage. And now he's a civilian, and he will be Secretary of Defense. And certainly we in the Black press, we look forward to working with the Department of Defense under Secretary Austin's leadership, because we have many messages about all the opportunities in the Defense Department for service by African Americans. And we want to make sure that some of those advertising dollars, Stacey, of the new Department of Defense under General Austin's leadership will go to the Black press. So in all those departments that now have new leadership. So look, brighter days are coming, and we want to stay tuned. And of course, beginning next Monday, we'll be right back here, Stacey, with breaking news, with letting it be known.
Absolutely. And let it be known, no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Everybody, wear a mask, wash your hands, stay safe, social distance, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.